Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. If we have not met before, my name is Sydney Kraviak and I am the Program and Outreach Coordinator here at Peters Township Public Library. We are very excited to have with us for the 16th consecutive year members of the Army War College. So before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping things. We will be utilizing the Q&A feature tonight. So on your screen, there should be, looks like 2 text boxes that you'll be able to open up. So you'll be able to type in questions for our panelists, and this helps our panelists all be able to see them and go through and see if they've answered people's questions. We will have a hard cutoff time of 8:30 for our last question. Tonight is President Biden's first State of the Union address, so all these gentlemen need to hop off in time to get ready and watch that. We'll also have a quick poll, 2-question poll at the end of their presentation, just asking if you guys have a library card and how many people are watching with you this evening. We will be using screen share, so on your screen you should be able to see a slide from the United States Army War College with our speakers and the topics that they will be covering tonight, in addition to also seeing the different speakers. Some of the speakers may turn off their cameras at different points if they are not actively speaking, but they'll come back on whenever they are actively speaking. And a thank you to the Peters Township Public Library Foundation. They purchased our Zoom subscription and also this upgrade for our webinar, which really helps in the presentation for this program with the United States Army War College. So without further ado, this evening's topic for discussion will be the modernization of the military while maintaining talent. Based on the unknown future of warfare and the rise of near-peer global competition, the United States military has begun an investment strategy in modernization efforts while seeking to maintain the best talent across the active and reserve component. This panel will discuss the ongoing current initiatives and seek to drive a discussion on this point. I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Colonel Kevin Mccullough is a member of the academic year 2022 Army War College class. He was commissioned as second lieutenant in the United States Army in 1999 as an infantry officer. He transitioned to the Signal Corps in 2001, where he has served for the last 20 years. Colonel Mccullough has served in leadership roles at the platoon, company, battalion, brigade, and division levels within both tactical and strategic units, with command at the company and battalion levels. He additionally had the privilege to serve as the ROTC Profession of Military Science for numerous schools in Northwest Missouri. His most recent assignment was at the Signal Officer Branch Chief for over 5,000 active duty officers within the Officer Personnel Management Directorate at Army Human Resources Command. He has completed all requisite military education before attendance in the Army War College. His civilian education includes a Bachelor's of Business Administration from St. Norbert College and a Master's of Science in Administration from Central Michigan University. Thank you for being here with us this evening.
Thanks, Sid, and we're very excited again to continue this effort and partnership between both the folks there and the Army War College. So real quick, everyone, again, Kevin Mccullough, I'm going to go through real quick before we get on to the first topic and introduce the rest of our panel members. The first panel member I'm going to introduce is Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Genji, is currently a student at the United States Army War College. He received his commission as an armor officer from the United States Military Academy in 2001. He is a graduate of the Armor Officer Basic Course, Armor Captain's Career Course, and the United States Army Command and General Staff College. Prior to his arrival at Carlisle Barracks, he was assigned to Operations Group, the National Training Center, Port Irwin, California, where he served as a senior brigade trainer and senior cavalry trainer. Recent previous non-command assignments include service as the CJ-35 Operations Planner, ISAF Joint Command, Kabul, Afghanistan, where he deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, followed by service as a Squadron Executive Officer and Operations Officer for the 8th Squadron, 1st Cavalry Regiment, 2nd Stryker Brigade Combat Team, 2nd Infantry Division, Joint Base Lewis McChord, with the most recent staff assignment as a special assistant to the Director of Staff and the Executive Communications and Control Directorate at the Pentagon, Washington, D.C. His command assignments include over 47 months as a company command level, as a company commander in South Korea and Germany. In addition, serving over 22 months as a squadron commander at battalion command level in Fort Bliss, Texas, where he deployed to Kuwait and Syria in support of Operation Spartan Shield and Operation Inherent Resolve. Lieutenant Colonel Genji holds a Master of Arts degrees with an emphasis on international relations from the University of Oklahoma and a Bachelor's of Science degree in Russian and German from the United States Military Academy at West Point. Our next panelist is Commander Jared Tabor, and he is a student at the Army War College. He received his commission from the Navy Officers Candidate School in 2007, is designated as a naval aviator in 2010. In 2014, he was redesignated as a human resources officer. Prior to the Army War College, he was assigned to the Navy Talent Acquisitions Group Pacific, where he served as an officer in charge of Talent Acquisitions Onboarding Center Gold Coast. Previous assignments include service as a Satellite Operations Branch Officer and Mission Operations Officer for the Navy Naval Satellite Operations Center, Point Mugu, California. Officer in Charge, Personnel Support Detachment, Point Huron, California, and Executive Officer of Naval Technical Training Center, Meridian, Mississippi. Operationally, he served as a P-3 Charlie pilot with Patrol Squadron 10 out of Jacksonville, Florida, deploying to U.S. 5th Fleet in support of Operation New Dawn and Enduring Freedom. There, he was also the Air Crew Training Officer and Aircraft Maintenance Quality Assurance Officer. Commander Tabor holds a master's degree in Human Resources Integration from the Naval Postgraduate School and is a certified professional in human resources. Our next panel member tonight is Lieutenant Colonel Sean Plankinton, and he is a member of the Academic Year 22 Army War College class. He was commissioned a second lieutenant in the United States Army in 2001 as a signal officer. He transitioned to the field artillery in 2005, where he served for the last 17 years. Prior to his arrival at Carlisle Barracks, he was assigned to Joint Forces Headquarters, Kansas, where he served simultaneously as the Deputy G3 for the State National Guard and Battalion Commander for the 2nd Battalion, 130th Field Artillery. Previous non-command assignments include service as a Signal Platoon Leader, Battalion Executive Officer, Battalion Signal Officer, Readiness Analyst, and Assignment Officer. He served on the Army staff as a Collective Training Branch Chief and Reserve Component Integrator, while the Collection Training Division, and also as a Training Strategy and Policy Branch Chief for the National Guard Bureau. He has completed all requisite military education before attendance at the Army War College. Lieutenant Colonel Plankinton holds a master's degree in business administration from Baker University. Our final panelist tonight is Lieutenant Colonel Matt Johnson. He is a member of the Academic 22-year class at the Army War College. He was commissioned as second lieutenant in the United States Army in 2001 as an infantry officer. He transitioned to the Acquisitions Corps in 2010. Lieutenant Colonel Johnson served in leadership positions at the platoon leader and company commander in tactical units. As an acquisitions officer, Lieutenant Colonel Johnson served as the Assistant Product Manager, Test Officer, Requirements Officer, and Product Manager Bradley. As the Bradley Product Manager, Lieutenant Colonel Johnson managed a fleet of over 3,000 Bradleys and oversaw the final testing and evaluation production of the newest Bradley A4 variant. Lieutenant Colonel Johnson holds a Bachelor's of Science in Animal Science from Colorado State University and a Master's of Science in Engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's our panel tonight. We're all, as we said, we're all very excited to be here and have the opportunity. Again, I'd like to thank Peters Township Public Library and the residents in and around McMurray for the opportunity to maintain this relationship with the Army College, even during a COVID-19 environment. As we were bantering forth with Sid, who's done a phenomenal job setting this up in a remote environment for everyone, about hopefully, in the near term, next year or the year after, we can get back to doing some of this face-to-face as things return to some more sense of normal. As we discussed tonight, please understand that we will not be addressing the current environment in Eastern Europe this evening. We know that the United States remains committed to our NATO partners, and we continue to watch events unfold from Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So as students here at the War College, we are watching it just how you all are watching it at home. And we continue to support our NATO partners. So as we look at our topics this evening, Sid has them kind of thrown up there in the background, and we're going to be discussing some different things as we go. A lot of it is about talent management from what I'll be speaking to tonight. So with that, the first topic I kind of want to talk to is the Army shift towards Army talent management and how we're doing it. So in October of 2019, the Army published the Army People Strategy. So there was updated guidance from the Chief of Staff of the Army, General James Mccullough, pushing us more towards taking care of our people, the soldiers, the families, the Department of the Army civilians, and our soldiers for life. So that even incorporates the retirees and the veterans. So this was a significant change as our primary focus before had been readiness. Readiness was number one, to now say, hey, it doesn't do any good to be ready if we don't have the people to do the job. So as Sid had mentioned, on my last job, I was a Signal Officer Branch Chief at Human Resources Command for the Army. So I had approximately 5,000 active duty signal officers that my team and I were responsible for doing assignments, promotions, and making sure we kept career paths on track for active duty signal officers across the Army. So the first topic we're going to talk about was a significant change in how we've done business over the past 40 years. So it's called the Army Talent Alignment Process. So in 2018, there was a soft opening where they launched the tool, and the tool allowed units and officers to see each other. This was revolutionary because before, HRC would just assign an officer based on the need. So if you said you had a need, they would send you an officer. Sounds a little bit antiquated because it is. It's a very industrial process where I'm filling slots. So the Army has come up with the Army Talent Alignment Process. So in 2019, they went full opening on the new system. And the new system is used now to manage active component Army officers. The rest of the Army is kind of starting to transition towards this, but it launched first towards the active component Army officers. When we look at the Army officers versus the Army enlisted population, significant size difference between the two. So the Army Talent Alignment Process, ATAP, is what it's really called, created a new method in which to do this. So the officer now has significant more flexibility in what they can do and how they want to do it. And it's really aligning more with what you may be used to seeing in the civilian world. So the Army officer now will create a resume, and they will create a resume, and when they're open to move, so if they're coming out of a school or if they're coming out of their assignment, so they've completed assignment 3 years overseas and they're seeking a new assignment, the officer creates a resume and they go into a big pool of officers that are moving during that time period. The officers around the Army, there's still a requirement to move. For professional development reasons, officers still need to move. They have to move and go do different assignments to continue to develop them because the officer, as a lieutenant or captain, major, lieutenant colonel, or colonel, there's certain jobs that they need to do to become more proficient as they move through the Army. But the change is now the officer has a resume and they go into this talent marketplace. So the talent marketplace has two sides. It has the officer side where they're putting their resume and their references in there, and now they have the unit side. So units are also going out there, and units have the ability to create a web page and attract talent to their organization. So they can hire officers to come into their organization. They can interview them, they can call their references, and they can figure out who's the best fit for our organization. So this is really allows for officers to have a lot more say, and units to have a lot more say in the way that they're moving forward. So now officers are interviewing, units are interviewing, and now they have to figure out, hey, what are we going to do next? So they preference each other. So the officers preference and the units preference each other to determine what they want to do. So officer may have 100 assignments and they'll preference 1 to 100. So, and then the units have 100 officers that they interview. Now the units don't have to preference up 1 to 100, but they may preference 1 to 100. They really only have to go down to about 33%. So if they preference down that route, then the Army is going to run an algorithm, and that algorithm is going to match. It's going to match up where officers want to go and what units want to select officers. And it sounds like a little bit, it may be a little mechanical in the nature of the way the algorithm works. But what they found after doing this now for 3 turns is that officers, depending on the branch, between 60 to 70% of officers are getting one of their top 3 choices. So that's allowing officers to have a lot more availability selection in the field. The other piece that this is enabling is officers get to see all the assignments. They see everything out there. Units also get to see all the officers. So there may be talent out there that they didn't know about. So if they're looking for an officer with one specific skill, or they know that they're going to be doing a mission and that they're going to be doing a mission in a certain part of the world, and they're looking for someone with a certain language skill, officers can put that in their knowledge, skills, and behaviors on their resume and say, I have this experience. So units can actually search by their resumes and try to hire talent based on actual talent that they have and they professed within their resume. So it's really working out well for the Army. So and that's where I kind of say, hey, is this good? Is this being good? time is really going to tell, but all the feedback I have from officers in the field now and everything out there is this is really allowing officers to have choice and say in their next step in their careers. Now, with that, it goes to another thing that we think about, and I'll talk about that next, is how's that work with the spouse's career? And if you're trying to maintain something for the spouse's career, this allows more flexibility. At least the officer has an input where they go. Does it provide increased satisfaction that they get to potentially choose or at least list, their top assignment preferences? And those two pieces there are trying to drive retention to keep talent on the team. So that's kind of the Army talent alignment process. And I would love to be able to talk more. Any questions you may have on that. And as Sid has said, hey, the question and answer, you can type any questions in now or anything you may have, and then we'll get to them when they're all done. So if you have a question now, you can type it in there, and then we'll kind of come back to it. We'll triage the questions for the speaker, and then we'll come back to it. So the second topic I want to talk about tonight, before I turn it over to my peer, is really a niche topic that is really coming up to try to retain talent. And it's called the Talent-Based Career Alignment, or the TBCA program that the Army is doing. It's a pathway that guarantees a follow-on assignment after completing a certain training called the Captain's Career Course, and a certain assignment after that. So certain officers have these certain career path items that they have to do. For Army officers, generally, we call it a key developmental position, and it's critical for the promotion to the next rank. So that allows the officers to take advantage and potentially determine where they're going to go next. So the talent-based career alignment program allows them, while they're at the Captain's Career Course. So now we're talking officers roughly between probably 4 and 6 years in the Army, get to apply for the assignment that they want to go to at about the 7 to 9 year mark in the Army. And it's a retention tool. We want to retain the most talented officers out there. And this is a program that's still a test program, but it's out there to try and offer a guaranteed career path for folks to understand what they could do next. So you may have a high quality officer at the Captain's Career Course. They can go do a company command, become key developmental complete, and they already know before they even went to that assignment that they're guaranteed to go to an MBA program for a follow-on fellowship. Things like the Joint Chief of Staff internship program, congressional fellowships. They could go be an instructor at West Point, or they're going to go get a degree prior to instructing at West Point. So there's all these different things that they can apply to, but the intent is to provide a guaranteed career path, because it provides officers a known point forward and allows them to plan, allows their spouses to plan, allows their families to plan. So it's really about providing the top tier officers some ability out there. And with the talent-based career alignment, what they did, because a lot of these are tied to graduate programs, is they actually are taking the GRE exam at the Captain's Career Course now. So it allows them to know, hey, what programs am I even going to be available for on the back end? So it's a lot of great opportunities out there. But those are the two programs I wanted to talk about first. So that's the Army Talent Alignment and the talent-based career alignment program. So just some great things out there to provide predictability for the Army officer and the Army families. Because that's really what remains important to retaining talent. So up next is Lieutenant Colonel John Genji, and he's going to talk the command assessment program and the different things that have come along with that part of talent management. So John, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, sir, and good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Lieutenant Colonel John Genji, and tonight I'll be discussing the Army's Command Assessment Program, and this falls underneath this talent management focus the Army's gone into. First, I'll provide a quick review of the origin, timeline, and expansion of the program, and then I'll present a brief explanation of the Army's previous selection process before providing you with an overview of what the Command Assessment Program really entails. And then finally, I'll leave you with the results, at least for the initial program that went on, and then some of the future, what's the future concerning the initiative. So as Colonel Mccullough mentioned, under the new Army Talent Management Initiatives, to further its objective of seeking and maintaining talent, the Army initiated the Command Assessment Program. The mission of this assessment is to run a world-class, fair, consistent, and safe program. The basic principle is for the Army to obtain the most relevant information about potential commanders, which leads to better decisions about who the Army selects to command its forces and lead our soldiers. So again, the Army's overarching goal is to select those leaders best prepared to successfully lead battalion and brigade formations and fill primary general staff billets. This goes in line with the Army's desire to develop a culture of identifying, assessing, and selecting the best leaders to command in our Army. Now, the Army's initial program initiated just under 3 years ago in June 2019 with the Battalion Commander Assessment Program. This was also known by the acronym BCAP. Now, this pilot program at Fort Benning, Georgia, assessed 26 officers. And with that initial success, they launched the inaugural BCAP a few months later, which was held in January 2020. And that was to select the battalion commanders to fill positions opening up in fiscal year 2021. And in that assessment, they had 750 officers invited to participate. Now, with that mentioned, one notices that the Army starts its selection process early. So those individuals in 2019 were being looked at about 90 to 120 days after the commanders, which they were going to go replace, had just arrived at their units. So they look out early in identifying the talent to fill those positions. Now, 8 months later, following that, in September of 2020, the Army expanded the program further by introducing the Kernels Command Assessment Program, or CCAP. This one focused on an 06 colonel, whereas the BCAP was focused at the battalion level and lieutenant colonels for battalion command. So at CCAP, with the colonel focused assessment, it invited 319 officers to participate. The focus was to qualify for selection for brigade level command and primary general staff billets for fiscal year 2022. The following month, the Army went ahead and executed, again within a year, a second BCAP, as well as at the same time, they launched pilots for Acquisition Leader Assessment Program for acquisition officers, and then a Sergeant's Major Assessment Program focused on selecting brigade command sergeant majors. And again, this year, they went ahead with the Command Assessment Program and added 2 additional assessments, rounding out the program with the Medical Command Assessment Program, focused on selecting commanders for Army Medical Department commands, and then as well, the Division Chaplain Assessment Program, where they're going to look at selecting division chaplains for across the Army's divisions. So those are some of the programs put into place, or the titles of them. So what is the Command Assessment Program really, and how does it differ from how the Army's previously selected its commanders? Well, what is important to start off with is that the Army, with the introduction of the Command Assessment Program, is not scrapping its previous system, known as the Centralized Selection Board process. The Command Assessment Program complements this process. A lot of great things, good things that came from the way the Army was selecting. This here with the assessment program provides additional information to make better decisions. So we're capitalizing on that. Now, a little bit about that previous selection board process. It was adopted by the Army in 1975, and it comprises a selection board consisting of senior officers, which review 2 components of a participating officer's file. These include an officer's official Department of the Army record brief, and this is a record that captures the officer's Army career on a single document. It lists all of the previous assignments, duty positions, military and civilian education, and other pertinent information. The second area includes a focus on the officer's 5 most recent evaluation reports with an eye on the senior rater's comments, basically the officer's boss's boss, so to speak. From these 2 sources, the board selects based on the officer potential, and subsequently, they would rank each of the officer on what they call the Central Selection Board Order of Merit list. And this list ranked all those officers, and it was subdivided into principals, those that they said, yep, they will go in and fill command slots. And then they had alternates that would fill those slots if something happened to those primaries. Either they said, those principals, if they turned down the command and couldn't fill it for what other reason, family issues or health or something to that effect. So complementing this process now, as I said, is the Command Assessment Program. At this point, that order of merit list I talked about, the Army utilizes that. So they use that old system, calculate and analyze and develop that first list. And now we invite those individuals, at least from BCAP, that they deem with the potential to command, to a corresponding assessment. And here in the next few minutes, I'm focused predominantly on the BCAP, again, for Lieutenant Colonels and Battalion Command, and the CCAP, the Kernels assessment programs, and that one focused on brigade commands. Specifically, the command assessment program really further, like I said, expands the command selection process by incorporating additional relevant information. And they're obtaining this through multiple objective assessments. Now, an officer attending either BCAP or CCAP, they'll participate in 6 overall areas. The first area includes a psychometric testing and analysis of candidates. In addition, officer cognitive and non-cognitive abilities are assessed through the cognitive, non-cognitive assessment test. The second area of the program places a dedicated focus on assessing an officer's written communication skills. And this is to ensure that officer possesses a concise and effective communication skills critical to providing intent, orders, and guidance and feedback to their soldiers. So really this portion of the program utilizes 2 instruments to assess that attribute. And the first one, they're assessed through what they call the written communication competence test. And really that's evaluating the candidate's efficiency in the English language. Do they know how to write? Do they know how to use proper grammar and so forth? And then next, the officer is assessed in depending on which assessment, 1 of 2 written exercises. For those lieutenant colonels at BCAP, they're going to go ahead and take an argumentative writing essay. And then for the colonels competing for brigade at CCAP, they're going to be assessed through the strategic writing exercise. And that focuses really, can the candidate, do they possess the capacity to write at the strategic level and to write and hit at strategic objectives. Now, the third area of the program reviews peer and subordinate feedback, and that's collected through the Army's Commander Evaluation Tool and the Army Leader Assessment Tool. Now, these tools assist in capturing positive aspects of the candidate leadership traits and assist to identify counterproductive leadership tendencies from those candidates. And these are all pulled and obtained from previous peers and current peers of those candidates, as well as their previous subordinates. So they get the Army intends to provide, to take these to get a better understanding of those officers' capabilities relevant to the demands of command in those key positions from additional perspective, from somebody who has served under or with those individuals in the past. And again, this also helps to highlight those leader development opportunities based off of identified strengths or weaknesses. There wouldn't be an Army assessment without a physical assessment of the test. So our fourth area is administered with two aspects of that. First, the tried and true Army height and weight, so making sure those candidates are within regulation, and then the execution of an Army physical fitness test. Now, currently, since we don't have the new combat fitness test validated and approved, they're using that old fitness test, the 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, and a 2-mile run. But we expect once the Army identifies and validate their new test, that will be incorporated. And then the fifth area entails a leader reaction exercise for the BCAP participants and strategic leader exercise for the CCAP, again, those colonel candidates. And this is where the area where it's pretty kind of self-explanatory of, I'm going to be writing, I'm going to write something. And here on this exercise piece, they don't know. The candidates don't know specifically what they're doing. They show up to the time and place and they take that exercise. And this, again, is an aspect of the assessment program to keep a level of anonymity of the soldier or the candidate, and at the same time be able to provide an unbiased look at the candidate and make it as fair as possible. And then in that sixth area, the culminating event is the Army Comprehensive Talent Interview Board, or ACTI. Now, this is a structured, double-blind interview conducted by a panel of senior Army leaders focused on analyzing the past performance and to project the future behavior, and at the same time assessing that candidate's verbal skills. When I say double-blind, the candidate can't see the board, and the board cannot see the candidate. So they're behind a wall. They talk through a microphone, and at least the candidate talks through a microphone, and then there's a moderator that talks to the candidate. So again, the board knows nothing about the individual name, position, rank, what their past is. They get a dried, a scrubbed version of information and from the other assets, other assessment areas. Again, to try and not to have any bias, a true look at what the Army is looking at. it takes this again. The ACTI is that culminating event. It determines a participant's readiness for command, if they're ready to go or not yet ready. And it takes the totality of all the command assessment areas from that program for those other 5 areas, and they consolidate that down. Now, they'll take those results in the overall assessment, and then again, that'll list, again, the order of merit list we talked about from the old system that was used to invite individuals to the assessment program. That then is again used and compared with the results from this ACTI boards. And there's a reassessment. And based off those results, a candidate's position on that list can move up or down. They could go from an alternate to a primary to a principal. Say beforehand you were in the waiting just in case to fill a gap. Now, hey, we assess something here that you're ready for command. You have the potential. We're going to move you to principal. And then in some cases, the officer's assess is not yet ready for command. So they were on the list, something they saw that the Army, they weren't ready, didn't see the potential or whatever, and they were taken off the list. Now, again, with that being said, an officer assessed as such, and in line with the others Army's intent for this is making this program a redemptive process as well. And if eligible, a candidate can come back again the following year. And no matter at the end of this, the program provides all candidates, those that are principal, alternate, or not yet ready for command, a post 30-minute developmental outbrief from a qualified operational psychologist. These sessions provide each participant officer an overview. They don't get down the granularly with details. Again, they want to keep a line of bias, not bias, but limit that out and not give out too much to see how they're obtaining the results. But they talk about your identified overview of your strengths and weaknesses and help kind of give some feedback to the candidates. And then again, after the whole event, in addition to that outbrief, the Army offers each participant the option for additional confidential and professional counseling for all participants after departing the 4-day assessment to help better them. Again, that developmental aspect. And again, that's scheduled if the officer wishes to participate at their preference after the course. Now, again, from this, many of the previous participants highlight that the program provides the additional benefit, this additional benefit, and not only just selecting the Army, selecting the best leader, but it provides those candidates, those officers, an opportunity to reflect on their performance. You get the leadership strengths and weaknesses and incorporate that feedback from your peers and subordinates and those perspectives. And it really leads to an extraordinary personal development opportunity and event and experience for the candidates. So what is the results of this in the future for this command assessment program? Again, that first fully administered program iteration of BCAP I talked about in 2020 January for fiscal year 2021, it had 750 officers invited. And from this, there was 426 that were selected as principals and 224 selected as alternates. Now, overall, there was a 34% change between that initial order of merit list that was established from the centralized selection board process to after the ACTI boards that the assessment had. And that order of merit list changed with 150 previous principal selectees. Now were either alternates or they were assessed and not ready for command. So again, that 150 number broke down to 26 individuals that by the old process decide, hey, I don't want to participate, I don't want to do it. So they took their name and took their names off the hat. So 26 people that were previously would have been principals, unbeknownst to them, took themselves out. An additional 25, though, of that 750 that were invited, those were identified. They were previously principals by the old system, but were identified as not yet ready for command. And then the remaining 99 were previous principals that now were moved down to an alternate position, and otherwise the alternates that were previous were now principals. So there was a reshuffling. The Army was able to better assess the written, verbal, and capacity of those officers to provide a better decision on who should command. And with that, since then, the Army's conducted, again, 2 additional BCAP iterations. So they had one that focused on selecting commanders for fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023. And then thus far, the Army's conducted 2 of the Kernel Command Assessment Program iterations, and they just completed their assessment for fiscal year 2023 recently. Now, again, with the Army holding people as its number one priority in the talent management change, this command assessment program really does assist in ensuring that we identify the best officers. And really, it's important to do that again because we want to identify those best officers to lead our greatest weapon, the American soldier, and take care of people. So with that, I appreciate the time. I'll now transition the discussion over to Commander Jared Taymor, who's going to highlight some key aspects of the U.S. Navy's human resources modernization efforts. Jared.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And good evening, everybody. I'm Commander Jared Tabor. I just first wanted to say how much I appreciate those involved with making this presentation happen. And I also want to thank you all in attendance here tonight. I think it's great for us to be able to have this dialogue. And I'm very happy to share with you some initiatives that the Navy has launched in its HR modernization campaign that seem to parallel what the Army is doing. So who cares about Navy HR modernization and why is it important? I think those are fair questions, and they're definitely questions I've asked myself over time, especially since I've been a part of an ongoing effort since early 2018, and it's been a pretty difficult, bumpy road. It's been one full of seemingly really great ideas at times that have been replaced by probably not so great ideas at times, and then replaced again with something in between. But really, for what purpose? And I think the answer certainly has its roots in our changing environment. Particularly, as most of you know, our security environment has dramatically changed over the last few decades. We see several nations contesting the balance of power in key regions and seeking to undermine the existing world order and, quite frankly, rewrite it in their favor. Significant technological developments and aggressive military modernization by our rivals are eroding our military advantages, and that makes it difficult for us to even presume unhindered access to the world's oceans like we used to, especially in times of conflict today. As laid out in our Naval Service Doctrine, titled Advantage at Sea, maintaining the collective advantage requires modernization to reverse the erosion of our relative superiority to near-peer competitors in those key regions. Collectively, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard have all provided guidance to their services to build integrated all-domain naval forces that, as a part of the joint force, can fight and win our nation's war when called upon. However, modernization will not only require upgraded weapons and platforms, although vitally important. It will also require a comprehensive investment in time, our greatest resource, our sailors in my case, and the human resources enterprise designed to support them. According to our current Chief of Naval Operations, in his CNO's navigation plan of 2021, our sailors are the true source of our naval power. Controlling the seas and projecting power abroad requires our sailors to operate in all domains and across the competition continuum. There is a recognized strength to be gained from a diverse force, which means we must pursue combat-minded sailors with varied sets of knowledge, skills, abilities, and experiences to operate, sustain, and maintain our Navy's tremendous fighting power. To that end, the Navy must accelerate its sailor development and harness their talents to keep America safe and prosperous. The Navy must also ensure its sailors remain the best trained in the world. This means continuing investments in training concepts, such as the Navy's Ready Relevant Learning and live virtual constructive training. Ready Relevant Learning is the Navy's new training concept to provide timely, relevant training using a multi-path approach to ensure our operators have the knowledge they need to be successful in combat. Live virtual constructive training combines improved computational power and network technology to blend the intensity of underway operations with high-fidelity virtual training. This allows our sailors to master platform-specific tactics in safe and controllable conditions. As is true for all services, under the stress of combat, we will always fall back to our baseline training, and obviously better training methods will yield a greater baseline. Likewise, the current Chief of Naval Personnel in his commander's intent recognizes the sailor as the Navy's single greatest asymmetric advantage. In his guidance, he directs the Navy to embrace the need for modernization and the way it provides personnel support. Specifically, the Navy's HR organization, which is branded today as My Navy HR, will build better policies, programs, systems, and procedures to keep pace with the demands necessary for a better, stronger, and more capable Navy. And transformation will ensure the My Navy HR team can and will compete as a world-class personnel organization that's able to improve naval readiness while reducing its personnel costs. Aligned with that intent, the My Navy HR enterprise is currently underway in transforming the way it offers human resources through a holistic end-to-end effort that will impact the Navy's hire to retire life cycles. This effort seeks to improve service delivery to sailors, their families, and new recruits along 6 lines of effort. Those are personnel and pay, sailor experience, My Navy assignment, authoritative data environment, ready relevant learning, and recruiting transformation. So the personnel and pay line of effort includes an updated Navy personnel and pay system, which we call NP2, that will essentially be the first integrated active and reserve personnel and pay system to enhance the way sailors receive pay and support, and also improves Navy's pay auditability. Sailor experience is the Navy's concept to provide integrated HR self-service and a 24/7 contact center for quick and effective career management and personnel and pay issue resolution. It also uses a single point of entry, which will allow and provide a direct connection to all My Navy HR websites that enables self-service access to useful resources anytime and anywhere. My Navy assignment, much like the Army that Colonel Mccullough was talking about, is a detailing marketplace interface that improves the functionalities for sailors to explore, research, and apply for jobs. It also provides commanding officers a mechanism to screen those applicants for the right knowledge, skills, and abilities before they accept that sailor. And the authoritative data environment is really the concept to provide a single integrated authoritative data source for My Navy HR data to provide analytical tools and enable efficiencies and higher performance. And then Ready Relevant Learning, as previously introduced, is a modernized content delivery and curriculum development system designed to support on-demand training at the point of need. And then recruiting transformation is the recruiting command is transforming the way it does business to include a modernized approach to obtain the right sailor at the right time with the right skills while matching those skill sets to the job to meet current and future mission needs. A simultaneous goal and parallel effort for My Navy HR is also to deliver on the Navy Sailor 2025 initiative. This is the Navy's overarching program to improve and modernize personnel management and training systems to recruit, develop, manage, reward, and retain the best force for a growing Navy that demands more complex skills in a more complex environment. The initiative focuses on empowering sailors, updating policies, procedures, and operating systems, while providing the right training at the right time in the right way to ensure sailors are ready for the fleet. Accomplishing this demands innovation built in a framework of 3 pillars that are inextricably linked to those 6 transformation lines of effort that I previously introduced. Those are a modern personnel system, a career learning continuum, also known as Ready Relevant Learning that I talked about, and career readiness. The personnel system modernization pillar includes new personnel initiatives aimed at empowering commanding officers, developing flexible policies, increasing transparency, providing better tools to sailors and leadership, and giving more choices to sailors. To recruit and retain the very best, the Navy needs modern policies and retention tools that offer flexibility and choices. This gives sailors more control and ownership over their careers and allows the Navy to adapt to the economic changes and corresponding effects on the recruiting market and retention. The career learning continuum, also known as Ready Relevant Learning, will provide the right training at the right time in the right way for our sailors. The training delivery will occur through a modernized method that enables faster learning and better knowledge retention at multiple points throughout a career. This will help transform the current industrial conveyor belt training model into a modern one that delivers refreshed content for changing technologies and allows sailors to perform on day one of their new units. And the goal for the career readiness pillar is to enhance sailors' career readiness by focusing on leader development and removing any obstacles that negatively influence a sailor's decision to stay Navy, especially when they're looking to start a family and raise a family. At the same time, the Navy also recognizes diversity as crucial to reaching its potential. Leaders can significantly optimize unit performance by capitalizing on the energy and capabilities of a diverse and inclusive team. So what does this really mean? Where are we going as a Navy? And for My Navy HR? Well, the My Navy HR team will continue to innovate while pressing forward with its Sailor 2025 initiatives. These initiatives will deliver modernized training, better life-work balance, and tailored pay and incentives while providing more options, greater career flexibility, and increased transparency. Such innovations to retain talent, combined with those to recruit, train, and develop new talent, are critical to ensuring the fleet is properly manned with the right sailors in the right place at the right time and with the right training. Transformation in Sailor 2025 will ensure the Navy can deliver those sailors as part of a modernized force capable of achieving our Naval Service Chiefs' objectives to compete as part of the joint force with our near-peer rivals in an increasingly complex and dynamic operating environment. Once again, thank you for your time and attention. I'll now turn over to Lieutenant Colonel Sean Plankinton for his discussion on Army National Guard leader development through division alignment. Sean?
Thank you, Jared. Appreciate it. I'd be remiss if I didn't echo my peers and say thank you so much for all the work behind the scenes that SIDS provide to have this set up. And for all you joining us, I definitely look forward to some Q&A. So I'm a National Guard, been National Guard since August of 1990. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing in leader development. So you think back to the guardsmen that you had in Pennsylvania, assuming most of you are from Pennsylvania, in the 1970s. In large part, the utilization of the National Guard was in a strategic reserve. That is, when I ran out of things that I needed from the active duty force, I then reached down into the reserve component and I'd utilize those. We realized, especially after the events of 9/11, that your National Guardsmen, the about 13,500 folks in Pennsylvania, and the 330 to 340,000 Guardsmen across the 54 states and territories, that we're actually sharing the workload with the Army, and the Army depends on the Guard to be an operational reserve. So as things are going on around the world, that we're there to support. Generally, at any given time, there's about 40,000 Guardsmen on active duty, either serving in a COVID response, maybe within the state, or serving overseas in different deployment requirements. The Army also shifted in the late 90s and early 2000s to what many of you probably have heard, Brigade Combat Team, or BCTs, in large part based upon the counterterrorism threat that most of us have around the world. Really, we shifted away from divisions. If you think of the 28th here in Pennsylvania, or the 82nd Airborne, or the 101st, that are probably most common, whether it's in film or just vernacular. We've shifted away from divisions really being the focus to these brigade combat teams that had very specific capability sets that really were getting at the deployment requirements at the time. The Army realized in the late 2010s that really we needed to shift back and look at divisions. And that's where the Guard had an opportunity to maybe make an enhancement based upon how it had originally done business in the past. Based upon the Army's change and the shift from a strategic reserve to an operational reserve, came greater funding and greater requirements and greater expectations on what they expected from your Guardsmen, both here in Pennsylvania and abroad. When add to that, when I graduated high school, I graduated and my parents gave me a Commodore 64 that you turn the computer on and it had 39,000 bytes free, 39K. Now we've got, sticks with, megabytes and gigabytes worth of storage. So things have gotten far more complex, both from the utilization of space, whether it's looking at things or tracking where both good and bad guys might be at, but also the use of cyberspace and the amount of technology that we have both in our systems and what our systems rely on to use. So things have gotten more complex. The tyranny of distance that a Guard unit has relative to an active duty division. So again, taking the 82nd Airborne down in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, that division commander, that two-star general, has all of his brigade combat teams, all of his aviation, all of his artillery, sustainment, everything's right there. There's no tyranny of distance. I don't have things spread from Erie and Pittsburgh to Philadelphia or Shippensburg, but it's all right there. And then add to that the time factor. The National Guard typically trains 39 to 45 days per year. So as you've kind of heard in probably several ads, 1 week in a month, 2 to 3 weeks during the summer. And by and large, the senior officer enlisted folks that fill our ranks at the division headquarters level are also highly marketable on the outside. They're CFOs and CEOs of corporations. We have folks that serve as state troopers, as IG for the Department of Agriculture. So we have a very level and requirements outside, but we also expect these same folks to take 12, 13, and 15,000 man organizations, prepare them to go to combat, all while looking at the tyranny of distance. But the one thing that we fought over time to really kind of get after the leader development was we didn't always align our combat formations with our division headquarters. Historically, we weren't going to be an organization that we're used on initially, but as we progressed to be the operational reserve, we quickly realized that if we were going to maximize the amount of time that senior officers and senior enlisted had to prepare themselves and their organization and the subordinate commanders and folks below them, we needed to align the same organizations habitually. This would allow them to maintain contact. It would be the same units coordinating with the same headquarters, so the same operating procedures. So an example was, if I were to ask each of you you have to manage a manufacturing process within the state of Pennsylvania. It's going to be something I might need if we had really bad weather. Pennsylvania was going to, go to war with New York. So you had to manage the manufacturing process, but you not only did you have parts of your process in multiple places throughout the state from corner to corner, but you also only had a part-time force, and I might even nest a few things in other states. How do you get your organization ready if called upon? Those are the types of things that we ask our division commanders to do. In the state of Pennsylvania, you do have the benefit of not only having the division headquarters and a couple of the brigades, but you also have two more brigades that are going to be aligned to the 28th Division that are outside of the state. Take, for example, the 35th Infantry Division in Kansas. It has no brigade combat teams within the state. Or your brigade combat team commander in Arkansas or Oklahoma, you also have no division headquarters within your state to be able to develop yourself to be that senior leader of the future. So this is an opportunity for the Guard to take the organizations that we have, habitually align them to headquarters, and try to maximize the training and development of our officers and senior NCOs as they progress over time. We do have some subtle nuances that my active duty compadres don't have to fight with. We have some legal requirements of the positions that they have to hold. If I'm a guardsman that currently as a brigade combat team commander and I'm in Ohio, but you want me to be the division commander for the 28th Division, there's some legal requirements of what state I have to belong to before I can command and control and be able to manage the organizations within Pennsylvania. So we have some unique requirements that we must have to work through, and we're working through those as we speak. But as the Army National Guard has shifted away from being something that you only use, break glass in case of emergency, we want to make sure that if I only have these senior officers, the future of the divisions, 39 to 45 days per year, and they're trying to manage organizations that may spread across multiple states, how can I most effectively develop the leaders of the future, both develop them as they rise in ranks, but also allow those senior leaders of today to manage the senior leaders of tomorrow? We're building those habitual alignments so that the Army National Guard will look awful lot like the regular Army, so we can develop those senior leaders. So when called upon, there's no difference between a regular Army division and an Army Guard division. It's just maybe the amount of time it took us to prepare to deploy and mobilize. So I look forward to your questions. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to Kevin Mccullough, who's going to talk a little bit about our cyber warriors and how we try to recruit and retain them. So Kevin, back over to you, and I look forward to people's questions at the end.
All right, thanks, Blank. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, kind of dovetailing off Lieutenant Colonel Plankinton, his comments as well there. What I'm going to talk about is, some some changes with recruiting and retaining cyber professionals. So, and this really gets at to, there was a change in the National Defense Authorization Act in 2017, and it's since been expanded since then. Congress actually authorized the military to direct commission all the way up into the rank of colonel. So, you know, the normal timeline, a due course colonel in the Army, it's about 22 years to be promoted to colonel in the Army, based on a normal glide path for an officer. So as you look at that, that is that piece has changed, and why it's changed is because we now are trying to find potential officers, whether in the cyber corps, the signal corps, or other critical branches out there that have the skills and experience that it can either enter active duty, they can enter the reserve component, they can enter the National Guard. But right now, you could commission an officer coming in. Right, they have, to a point, only commissioned thus far, I think, to a major level within the Cyber Corps, but it's having the skills and experience. So if you have a officer, or you have a civilian off the street that's interested in joining the Army, and they meet the criteria for joining the Army and commissioning as an officer, and they have the requisite skills and experience associated with that, that allows them to apply, and they may enter the Army as a captain, as a major, as a lieutenant colonel, or as a colonel. They would then receive the necessary education associated with the rank in which they have been commissioned at, and then they'll go serve. But it's an opportunity for us to try and have talent come in off the street to bring some of that expertise from critical areas out there that's very hard to develop and retain within the Army. On the retention tool for cyber professionals, we do have the opportunity to provide skills and bonuses out there to try and retain those men and women in the ranks. But really, the game changer was the change to the National Defense Authorization Act that really allowed to be able to find talent within the civilian world that wants to join the Army, that wants to serve, that they can commission, and they receive the benefit, everything that they've done in the civilian world, their education, as well as all the experience that they've accumulated, could actually translate to an increased roles and responsibilities within the Army versus entering as a second lieutenant. So just a game changer that I think over the next decade, you'll start seeing more and more officers who are able to take advantage of that. It's not going to be a huge amount because we still have our major commissioning sources out there between Cadet Command, West Point, and Federal OCS. But that is definitely something that has opened up the aperture to try and bring talent into the Army. And with that, I won't spend any more time. I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Matt Johnson, who's going to talk about Army Futures Command, some of the Army modernization priorities. Matt, it's all yours.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. But yeah, I do want to echo thank you to the Peters Township Library for putting this on, and for all of you that are taking time out of your busy schedules to listen to us. Obviously, we'd prefer to do this in person so that we could interact with you a little bit more. But unfortunately, due to COVID, we can't do that. So the last couple guys have really talked a lot about personnel and the changes that the Army and the Navy are making to kind of how we manage personnel. Well, if we're changing personnel, we're going to have to change equipment. And so I'm going to talk to you guys a little about modernization of our force and the equipment and the material that we use that allows us to win on the battlefield. So a real short history. Really in 2019, the Army published their Army Modernization Strategy. This was the kind of a culmination from a couple years of effort where we established what we called cross-functional teams to focus on some new priorities. And then we stood up Army Futures Command in 2018 because that supports the overall Army strategy. And so we've got an Army Modernization Strategy as well. And so when you talk Army Futures Command, that was formed to kind of highlight the emphasis that the Army has chosen to put into modernization. After 20 years at war in Afghanistan, and that included Iraq, and trying to build an army to fight those wars, we realized that we need to kind of refocus our efforts. And so we recognize that we need leadership to do that. Hence, we created Army Futures Command to do that. And it's led by a 4-star general. Our other 4-star commands all have unique areas that they focus on to support our Army. Training and Doctrine Command is responsible really for training the force and feeding our units and our operational force with qualified soldiers, which kind of leads back to the previous discussions. Army Material Command sustains our force and really the equipment that we use. They keep it running, keep it fixed. And then we have Forces Command, which is responsible really for our operational units and providing units to our combatant commanders to support current operations and contingencies. So the end state when we talk about a modernized Army is really that we're looking for an Army that's capable of conducting what we're calling multi-domain operations, which is kind of a new doctrine that we're going to eventually have our Army operate under. When we talk multi-domain, that's an understanding from the Army that conflict happens in not only one domain like land, but it happens in land, it happens in air, it happens at sea. Kevin just talked about cyber professionals. Cyberspace is a realm as well. And so being able to operate in all of those domains, as we like to call them, is really what the goal of multi-domain operations is. And our modernization is driven to ensure that our forces will be able to fight in that manner. So when we talk modernization, the Army's kind of focused it on 6 specific priorities: long-range precision fires, next-generation combat vehicles, future vertical lift, the network, air and missile defense, and soldier lethality. And so when you talk those 6 modernization priorities, those are going to be driving our material development and what, for me personally as an acquisition officer, and the Army is going to really focus our investments in. And when you talk like long-range precision fires, specifically, that's going to enable us to, at the end of the day, shoot farther. But it's really designed to penetrate and neutralize anti-access and area denial capabilities for our enemies, and to provide us the overmatch that we like to ensure that we have. We want to be able to hit them and see them and hit them before they can see and hit us, obviously. And then, of course, next generation combat vehicles. As a former Bradley PM, this one is kind of near and dear to my heart because they're looking to replace the Bradley. And when you look at the next generation combat vehicles, that's to increase firepower, speed, survivability of our forces on the battlefield, and then allowing them to maneuver to superior positions, and then additionally to pair them with robotic vehicles as well, which will obviously limit the exposure of soldiers on the battlefield. Future vertical lift is just new helicopters, and we're looking at platforms and technologies that are going to basically make our helicopter fleet better. When you look at endurance, lethality, survivability of the aircraft, and ultimately the intent is to increase the operational reach and the effectiveness of our helicopters against our peer competitors. The network is a really fun one as well. For you guys, it's we've got the phone, and you get on it and you answer and you make phone calls. You don't really have any issues when you talk the network. On our side, we operate in degraded environments. Most of the time, we operate in austere environments where there aren't necessarily systems set up. We have to have secure communications. And so when you talk the network, that's where it's really focused on being able to command and control our forces across vast terrain, and then being able to converge effects across all the domains that I previously mentioned, such as land, sea, air, cyber, et cetera. And then, of course, that common situational understanding for the commander, so that he or she can make right decisions to execute their mission. The other one is air and missile defense. Our competitors have invested heavily in indirect fire and missile capabilities, which forces us to do ours as well so that we can maintain that overmatch. And then additionally, we're looking to be able to leverage that to defend our ground forces against adversary air threats, and then of course, and missile threats as well. And then the last modernization priority is what we call soldier lethality. And so the focus there really is giving our soldiers, the individual soldier on the battlefield, more capability. We want to provide them a more lethal weapon, which we are moving forward with. We want to provide them with enhanced night vision so they can see better and farther at night, increase their ability to understand and react to emerging situations. And then, of course, the other piece to that is while providing the soldier additional equipment and material to do his or her job better, we are also looking to improve the soldier itself. And so there's efforts to improve fitness, to improve nutrition, improve a soldier's resiliency to be able to respond and recover from events. And so we're modernizing the soldier and the soldier's equipment. And those 6 priority areas are supported by what we call the cross-functional teams. And we actually have 8 cross-functional teams. And so when you look at the network, for example, that's broken into 2 cross-functional teams. One is specifically for the network, which is straight up communication and passing of information. And then the other one is, we call it assured positioning, navigation, and timing, which is just, at the end of the day, it's just another way to say better GPS. Being able to know where we are on the battlefield, know where our brother and sister units are, and being able to just have a better picture of what's going on so that we know where we are and where we have to go. Because sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge. The other one that's broken up into 2 different CFTs is soldier lethality. As I kind of discussed, we got soldier lethality where we're looking to do the next generation squad weapon. We've got enhanced night vision goggles. We've got the integrated visual augmentation system, which basically is, if you think of, for example, like Google Glass, it's a version of that where we have augmented reality on the screen, feeding us data so that we can understand in real time what's going on the battlefield. And then soldier lethality is broken up, and we've broken it up into the synthetic training environment, which is where we really are focused on new training aspects to allow our soldiers to train, virtual trainers, terrain systems, just different ways to do our training to maximize a soldier's time to be able to ensure that they are trained and qualified as a soldier, as a team, as a squad, as a crew, as a platoon, to be able to conduct their battle mission and tasks. And then real quick, yeah. So when we talk modernization, it takes time. And what I mean by takes time is right now the Army plans to replace, for example, we'll take the Bradley fighting vehicle, for example. And we have an effort right now called the Optionally Manned Fighting Vehicle, which is currently ongoing in a design type phase where we're working with multiple vendors to kind of design what that vehicle is going to look like. And when that vehicle comes to fruition and we field it to the force, we're not fielding it to the entire force at one time. For example, we have 19 brigades that would receive that vehicle, plus our training units. And so the Army's modernization and replacement plan for the Bradley, for example, is basically 1 brigade a year. And so when you look at, I've got 19 brigades and I have training units as well that also need that vehicle. At 1 brigade a year, you're looking at 19 to 20 years to really get that modernization completed. at which point you're going to recognize that 20 years later, it's no longer really a modernized vehicle. And so the other piece to the Army modernization strategy and where Army Futures Command is going to come in is recognizing the speed of technology. I'm sure most of you are not driving around a 20-year-old car. And if you are, it's probably more for choice. But when you look at cars today, or even the cell phone, for example, 20 years ago, most people didn't have cell phones. But when you look at vehicles today and the available technology in those vehicles, and you think back 20 years ago to what we had, it doesn't compare. Adaptive cruise control, all those different types of things that you're able to do now. We've got touch screens in there. You've got all sorts of sensors, backup cameras. You got side cameras. You got front cameras. It's crazy what we've got in our cars today, and being able to recognize that for the Army to accept technology as it advances over the span of 20 years, and being able to fit that into those vehicles as we bring them off the production line, or potentially retrofit them as well, which is one of the other pieces. Because when you talk the Bradley replacement, it's going to take 20 years to replace the Bradley. So 15 years from now, 10 years from now, I'm still going to have half of my formation in Bradleys. And those Bradleys still need to be able to fight and operate in a multi-domain operations environment. And so we're going to have to be able to cascade some of those technologies that we're developing under the CFTs, the cross-functional teams, to our current platforms so that they can still be capable and to provide complementary overmatch capabilities. And so with that, the Army's Future Command is, again, it's the Army recognizing the importance of modernization. And it's not just what we fight with and the equipment, which was the focus of kind of where I was going to discuss with you, but it's also how we fight, which is the doctrine that is going to underpin the multi-domain operations and who we are. And that's the talent management piece that pretty much everybody kind of addressed already previously. So I can go into a lot more detail, but I want to give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions. We've got some questions already queued up, and so I'm going to pass it back to Colonel Mccullough to kind of lead the Q&A portion of our discussion. I look forward to you guys thinking about so what kind of questions you've got for us. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. And so we will we'll go into the question and answer. So what I would ask you, the way it's currently set up is that it's through the Q&A, not a hand raised or mics are going to get turned on or anything like that. So if you do have a question, please enter it into the Q&A that's listed there on the bottom tab, so that way we can address it to the group. So the first question is out there is, and I'm going to read the questions so that way everyone has the opportunity to hear. I understand some folks are watching at the library, so anyone who is or watching in a group, if you're not sitting in front of a device, that would help with it. So the first question is, do officers have to participate in the talent alignment process? If no, then how are they assigned through the old process? So the vast majority of officers are all in the Army talent alignment process. So all active duty officers, minus their initial assignment, go through the ATAP process. So when I say the initial assignment, so when a second lieutenant comes in, or when someone comes out of the warrant officer basic course, when they graduate those courses, they are not in the ATAP process. All other officers are assigned through the ATAP process, where they are going to be put into the system and they are going to have the opportunity to preference, and units are going to have the opportunity to choose the officers they'd like to come with it. So it is expanding. So it has already expanded to the enlisted side. On the enlisted side, it's one-sided right now, is my understanding, where it is doing the enlisted members get to put their preferences in, and then it's also expanding to recently to the reserve component, the active guard reserve members in the reserve component, and it expanded to them. So it's continuing to expand. The Army talent management concept is, hey, if they roll it out on one end and it's successful, they're going to kind of look at that to move between those different elements. So our next question is reference the command assessment program, and the question is, how long does it take to complete all the phases of the command assessment program, and is it voluntary for officers to apply to the command assessment program through the command assessment program? And John, I'll let you answer that. I'll let you answer that question.
Okay, thank you. So that first part, the assessment usually occurs over 4 days. And again, they spread out those 6 areas I talked about over those 4 days, with really the goal is to provide the time and the ability for each candidate to come to those assessments with their A game at their best that they can be. And again, at the same time, they want to pull out any biases, make it as fair across the board for everybody, and that everybody can come at their best. Even so much that when they do the PT test, it is all done indoors on the same track, the same gym floor, mats, and everything else. So everybody takes it. There's no advantage, and so it's a 4 days is what it takes. That second question there is it really lines in to the previous selection piece. So after the board meets at the end, that Army comprehensive talent interview, that list is recreated again, like I said, adjusted. From that list, then it goes into the Human Resources Command, and previous to it, the soldiers, the candidates, put forward their preference list, where there's all the lists that the Army is projecting that will be open, and those the commands are looking to fill. And every candidate ranks every single one, and their vote to volunteer for what they would like to go do. So the Army will use that in their assessing their needs of where they're going to put everybody. And that's how they get to apply, so to speak, for a command assignment. And really, that's their vote. And then I could take that next one down there too. Okay, that's another command assessment program about the
yes,
program, or will it?
Yep. So, and I was going to add one thing. So just so everyone knows, like the command assessment program, they come from across the world. So people in Korea, people in Kuwait, people in Europe, like everyone descends on Fort Knox to attend that command assessment program if it's their year group's term to attend it. So they do, if you're coming from Korea, they get a few days. They do get a few days to come in and acclimate. It truly is, it's one of the best programs I've seen the Army run. And they're really looking at how do we give everyone a even playing field, clean sheet, to come there and be at their best performance throughout the assessment. So it truly is. And John, the next question is the command assessment program a pilot program, or will it remain in place for the future?
So right now, the only pilot they did was that 2019 with the BCAP. And since then, they've expanded and it's grown, as I said, those 6 areas of the from not only the BCAP, the battalion commander assessment program for those lieutenant colonels, and the colonel command assessment program for the full colonel. Then they had, like I said, the acquisition leaders assessment program, the medical command assessment program for medical officers, the division chaplain assessment program, and then the sergeant major's assessment program. For those 6 there, it is growing. So I don't see it going away. Actually, the Army, again, as I was saying earlier, they're looking to build that culture of identifying, assessing, and selecting those best officers. So they're even looking to expand assessing officers at when they're majors, captains, and those other initiatives. So don't see the command assessment program going away. It may expand if they see other things, other levels of command they want to look at. But I think it won't go away, and it's still going. It's a great, again, seen some great things, some great feedback, and again, the Army is able to pick the best and put those in position.
Okay, thanks, John. And so, John, the next question again is on the command assessment program. You kind of already provided another answer. So the question is, about the major shuffling of people who've been previously identified for command, and with the new formats were shown that they weren't ready. What were the previous metrics that allowed for that to occur?
Okay, so on the previous assessment, again, that centralized selection board process, the only information that the board looked at was, again, 5 of the last evaluation reports of the officer, that candidate that was there, and then the 1-page record brief that talked about their whole previous assignments, duty positions, military and civilian education, and other pertinent data. So off of those pieces of paper, they ranked and ranked folks for command. And with the assessments program, now we have all these additional assessment objectives and areas that we can pull other information from to expand on that. So we were able to take a large population, move it down to through the centralized selection board process, have that order of merit list like I spoke about, and then off of that invite a certain number. So again, off of that first inaugural BCAP that took place in January of 2020, there were 750 individuals that were selected or invited, to come and participate. 26 of those decide, hey, I don't want to participate in that. So they didn't even take part in the assessment. So there was 150 out of 750 that changed from that initial list. So again, first that 26, then there was the 25 that were deemed not yet ready for command, based off of, could have been their written, their verbal, something they saw from the peer or subordinate feedback, something maybe with the cognitive assessment, their ability on their exercise for whatever level for the battalion, doing the argumentative essay or the strategic level events for that colonel, that there they were provided some info or data that the board deemed they weren't ready for command. They weren't either ready, didn't have the potential yet, or they need to help the candidate, so to speak, identify a hole in their swing, and to have them go back and look at it over the next year before coming back. And then the other 99 individuals off that 150, they were previously alternate, and they showed something that the Army said, hey, this is something that this candidate here actually has what we want. They've got some great feedback, great writing, verbal communication skills at the level we needed. They moved up as some other individuals moved down. So that's where I think that answers the question, hopefully.
Yeah, John, I would agree. And I think the biggest thing, probably the biggest angst, honestly, amongst some of the Army officers out there was when the command assessment program came up is, hey, are you going to discount what I've done to this point in my career? Are you going to not look at the 15, 16, 17, 20 years of service that I've done to this point and only base it on 4 days? And it really doesn't, because that OML, the order of merit list from the board, is still used. Everything that you've done in your previous jobs, all the work that you've done along the way, is still used in the overall assessment. It's now with the command assessment program, it's really just expanded upon, and it's a 360 degree, because it comes with contacting your peers and subordinates and superiors as well to get another assessment outside. So it truly is, it truly is a much more in-depth look than a paper file only review. So in Sid, that's right now. Those are all the questions that I see inside the Q&A section.
Yeah, if anyone has a final question, feel free to type it in. Otherwise, do you guys have any final remarks you want to make before we all head off to the 9 p.m. State of the Union address?
Team, I'll turn it over. Everybody's good.
Just want to thank again to everybody for joining us tonight. Again, Sid, thanks for putting this on, and really thanks for having us come and speak this evening. It was really good, and enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for taking time out of your day as well to present to us and to our community. I'm very excited to continue our partnership with the U.S. Army War College, and looking forward to it for many years to come. So thank you.
Thanks again, Sid, and please, everyone, hopefully you have the opportunity to watch the 9 o'clock the 9 o'clock message tonight from President Biden. So I know that's Sid's on point. That's where we're all going to go next. So thanks again, and have a great evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.